Number 10. The woolly mammoth. The internet was abuzz over a video of a bear with a fish in its mouth that found its way to YouTube. Some wondered, what if woolies are still around? But there hasn't been a sighting for over 100 years. And even that seems a bit odd, considering the woolly died off 4,000 years ago. Yet in 1920, a Frenchman told a fantastic story of seeing what certainly sounds like a mammoth in Siberia. It was a huge elephant with big white tusks that were very curved. Its hair was a dark chestnut color as far as I could see. It had fairly long hair on the hindquarters, but it seemed shorter in the front. I must say, I had no idea there were such big elephants. A second beast was around. It seemed to be at least as big as the first. As late as 1948, frozen mammoths were discovered with meat still fresh. That's not exactly solid evidence, but given the vast wilderness of Siberia, it isn't out of the question. Every once in a while, unconfirmed reports will trickle out of the area, mentioning elephant-like creatures. Not exactly a confirmation, but it's pretty hard to mistake an elephant for a moose, so there may be something to it. Number 9. The passenger pigeon. Passenger pigeons used to number in the billions. John James Audubon once watched a flock fly overhead for 3 days, adding up to 300 million pigeons per hour. That's a lot of birds, but the problem with there being so many is that they were very easy to hunt. Hunters, loss of habitat, and infectious diseases contributed to their eventual extinction. Efforts to maintain small captive flocks failed because the birds were used to living in much larger groups. The last passenger pigeon, named Martha, died in the Cincinnati Zoo in 1914. 7 years after the passenger pigeon officially became extinct in the wild, a few were reportedly spotted by a fairly reputable person, US President Theodore Roosevelt. In 1907, while in Albemarle County, the first environmental president, who certainly knew his animal species, claimed he saw a small flock. Nowadays, someone occasionally sees a bird that looks a lot like the passenger pigeon. Small flocks are sometimes reportedly seen in their old nesting areas, mostly around the Ozark Mountains. It's entirely possible that these smaller flocks survived. Many people who know what they look like have seen passenger pigeons after their extinction date. Number 8. The Tasmanian Tiger. Tasmanian tigers were hunted for being a threat to livestock. Loss of habitat didn't help much either. The Tasmanian tiger officially died off in 1936. However, reported sightings are fairly common as far as extinct animals go. They've been spotted in Tasmania and mainland Australia, although none of these sightings are scientifically confirmed. Part of the confusion is that many of these sightings come from mainland Australia, where the species have been extinct since the 1800s. Number 7. The Yangtze River dolphin. This type of dolphin is exclusively found in the Yangtze River. These dolphins were once plentiful, but have been doomed by the construction of the Three Gorges Dam and the increased boat traffic. They were declared extinct in 2006, but then one was spotted just a year later. A team of scholars led by scientist Wang Ding confirmed the sighting. Unfortunately, there's only been that single sighting. A massive expedition of over 3,540 kilometers did not yield any further sightings. However, the Yangtze River is rather long, so there's always the chance that a few dolphins can still be around. Number 6. The Japanese wolf. There are actually two types of Japanese wolf, the Honshu wolf and the Hokkaido wolf. The Japanese wolf met its demise in the same way that many other animals did, at the hands of an American for being a pest to livestock. A man named Edwin Dunn, hired by the Japanese, dropped a little strychnine and greatly facilitated their downfall. The Honshu died off in 1905 and the Hokkaido in 1889. Despite the fact that they were presumed extinct, a Japanese wolf was sighted in 1910. Other sightings followed in the 1930s and again in the 1950s. If that wasn't enough, there have also been sightings in the 1990s. One theory is that the animals seen are actually a wolf-dog hybrid. That's certainly plausible, but are they a breeding population? Or is it more likely that the Japanese wolf is indeed still roaming the Japanese countryside? Number 5. The Ivorybilled Woodpecker. The Ivorybilled Woodpecker is a bit special because it never officially went extinct. It was declared extinct in the 1920s, only to be spotted throughout the 1940s. In the 1950s, it was again presumed extinct, so naturally it's still seen today. In 2005, there have been some documented sightings in Arkansas by a group of ornithologists. They recorded no fewer than 15 sightings of the Ivorybilled woodpecker. The fact that this group of ornithologists hailed from Cornell, an Ivy League school, would make you think that the Ivorybilled woodpecker was still flying. However, the Ivorybilled woodpecker is a bit of a third rail in the bird world. A number of scientists doubt the accuracy of the Cornell report. Then again, people had been wrong about their extinction in the 1920s and the 1940s, so the Ivorybilled woodpecker could still be flying today. Number 4. The Eastern Cougar. The eastern cougar was declared extinct in 2011, which is rather odd considering the enormous amount of sightings. There are sightings in practically every East Coast state, and of course sightings after the 2011 declaration. There are entire websites dedicated to state-specific sightings. People of New Hampshire saw and photographed a cougar that officially wasn't there. There's also footprints and fur, all the things you'd expect from a non-extinct animal. So the eastern cougar doesn't seem to be too extinct at all. Number 3. The Japanese river otter. The Japanese river otters became less common in the 1930s. By the time the 1970s rolled around, they were flat out rare. Declared extinct in 2012, it took just a year for one to be sighted again. Sightings are surprisingly common. In the first year since its extinct status, there have been 15 sightings. Most of these sightings are unofficial. However, getting a sighting recognized as official isn't a simple thing, because actually capturing the animal is usually required. Scientists like to point out that most of the recently seen otters were spotted in areas they wouldn't typically be, like polluted rivers. But it would seem normal for animals to go where the easy food is, especially if its numbers are dwindling. Number 2. The Mexican grizzly bear. The Mexican grizzly bear ranged from Mexico to as far north as Colorado. It was widely believed that the last one was killed in Mexico in 1960. They were officially declared extinct in 1964, and yet Mexican grizzlies continue to be spotted. The North American grizzly is found much further north, but southern Colorado has a few credible sightings. There is an uptick of sightings of grizzlies in the former Mexican grizzly range. There are definitely grizzlies in those parts. The only question is whether they're Mexican grizzlies. A 1979 study conducted 15 years after the extinction date showed evidence of grizzlies in Mexico. The study also established that remote Mexico was a suitable habitat for grizzly bears. Number 1. The Javan Tiger. The Javan tiger was found on the Indonesian island of Java. Hunting is the main reason why the Javan tigers died off. When you're on an island and you're being hunted, there's only so far you can go. The last official sighting of the animal occurred in 1976. However, they were allegedly captured throughout the 1980s. An exhaustive search in the mid-1990s led to a 1994 declaration that the Javan tigers were extinct, until someone saw them a year later. In 1995, a Javan forester accidentally discovered a group of Javan tigers. Sightings continued throughout the first decade of the 2000s. The Meru Batiri National Park, the site of the last confirmed sighting, seems to be the most likely spot for their survival. Of all the extinct animals, the Javan tiger is probably the most likely to still be around.